girls, grab your beers.
Hey everybody, this is Charlie from Anthrax, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle.
This is Mark Metcalf, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle with Bailey on Domain Cleveland Radio.
You are listening to today's Boondoggle with Bailey on Domain Cleveland Radio. Yes, Kato Kalin listens to this all the time.
Welcome to today's Boondoggle. Now here's your host.
I am Monty Heath, so one Heath, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle.
Hey, what's up? It's John from Skillet, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle on Domain Cleveland Radio.
Fasten your seatbelts.
Sonic Temple Art and Music Festival returns to historic Cruise Stadium. Slipknot, Disturbed, Pantera, The Original Misfits, Evanescence, Limp Bizkit, Judas Priest, Stain, Breaking Benjamin, A Day to Remember, Falling in Reverse, Sleep Token, Rise Again, 311, Seether, Mudvayne, and many more. May 16th through the 19th, Columbus, Ohio. Tickets on sale now at SonicTempleFestival.com.
What's going on, everybody? It's Bill Bailey with today's Boondoggle. And a real quick housekeeping note, if you are watching us on YouTube or Rumble or BitChute or Odyssey, please hit that follow and subscribe button. And if you're listening to us on Spotify, Apple, Google, whatever podcast platform you utilize, please hit that follow and subscribe button there as well so we can continue to bring you conversations like the one I'm bringing you today. I'm catching up with a longtime friend, a shipmate, my good friend, Senior Chief, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Senior Chief Dave Kallas. How you doing?
Hey, doing pretty good, Bill. How about yourself?
Good, man.
All right. Good talking to you.
Yeah, it was good catching up. Last time I saw you, I was down there at a veteran type retreat in your neck of the woods, and we were able to get breakfast together. And
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And then we got plenty of years of good times and memories together as a part of ACU2, which I'm sure we'll get into. But usually when I have somebody on, I like to get a quick background. So do you remember as a kid what you originally wanted to be when you grew up?
Man, I think I was all over the place. And I don't know if really, I feel like I'm still growing up sometimes, but I can remember specifically at one point wanting to be like a voice actor for like cartoons, man. I thought that was cool. Even as a younger adult, I was like, yeah, man, that's the job, man. I want to do, Scooby-Doo or so, whatever, something kind of, I don't know. It's probably more work than it looks like or seems like, but that was something kind of frivolous, I guess, but something I thought about. Yeah.
Nice. And then, when was it that you kind of felt the calling to serve your country?
I think for a long time, it's kind of strange, man. Like, I grew up in Lorraine, and I went to Admiral King High School, and I just, part of it, you start looking at what am I going to do after school, after high school. And like I said, man, I didn't really know. And so I started looking at the military, and I was kind of called toward the Navy, man. It just seemed like, more up my alley, the nautical thing. And
yeah, you had Admiral in your high school name, so it was kind of
sure that, and like there was the theme was there, right? Like anchors outside of our school, and we had like a goat, like build a goat for our mascot, and like present company accepted. You're not the goat, or maybe you are the podcast goat. Anyway, but. So there was that, and we grew up on the Great Lakes, so there was always that call with, it wasn't the ocean, but still, people that don't live in the Midwest don't get it. Like a lake is like something you can see across, and like the Great Lakes, Lake Erie might as well be an ocean, So
yeah,
so that type of thing, nautical. It was like the military, and then the nautical thing just felt like a natural fit for me.
And then, so you felt that call to the Navy, and when did you leave for boot camp, and where did you go for boot camp?
Yeah, so I did the delayed entry deal while I was like a senior in high school. Left in the fall of 1987. Wanted that last summer, like enjoying myself before. And plus, I was young. I started school September birthday, so I was like, hey, I want to be 18 when I go for whatever reason. And then, so 87, the fall of 87. And I went to Great Lakes, which probably most of your Navy vets will tell you Great Lakes, I'd say. But anyway, nice weather when we got there, but man, by the time we got out of there, it was pretty awful, Great Lakes winter.
Yeah. And then after boot camp, you went on to your first duty station, and where was that?
Yeah, so I did the I think similar to you, I did the apprenticeship program there at Great Lakes. So I stayed on an extra month or so, whatever that was. And then I did the airman apprentice, and I went to a bird farm for civilians out there. That's an aircraft carrier, USS Independence. And it was proudly sitting in the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard, right? And it was cold and gloomy, just like the Cleveland winters that we've talked about before. And you get to, the shipyard environment. And I was like, wow, what did I get myself into? But, it didn't last forever.
Yeah. I forgot we had the very similar path, except for, my aircraft carrier was underway. So I wasn't sitting in Philadelphia.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And then during your time in, which, and I mean, you could come up with a million things for this question, I'm sure, just from our time together in ACU too. But what are some of the oddest things you experienced during your time in?
Let's see, the oddest things. A lot of it's probably going to be ACU 2 stuff. I don't know if it's odd or funny.
Group, so.
What's that? Odd group, yeah, for sure. There's a couple funny situations that popped in my head, and one deals with you, and you might remember this. We, I don't know, we were probably E5s. Maybe I was an E5, you were an E4. I can't remember exactly, but somehow we were on some operation in Virginia, and they're like, hey, we need volunteers. Like, nobody's volunteering because they got the message, man. Navy stands for never again volunteer yourself. And I don't know if, for whatever reason, man, I get the itch when nobody's talking. I'm like, man, I can't just stand here. Nobody's talking. We look like dummies. And I guess Bill must have felt the same way for some reason. And so we're like, yeah, what do you got? It was Chief Wilson. And he's kind of shaking his head like, you dummies. So you know what I mean? Like, if you get picked and you can't do anything about it, that's one thing. But you guys just volunteered you don't even know what you're volunteering for. So we step forward. And they take us out with the Seabees on those floating causeway sections. You remember?
Yeah, it's starting to come back to me.
Yeah, and so we go out there, and it's like, yeah, we're gonna do this flexing. Like, all right, man, I don't know, that's cool.
Oh yeah,
so
that's
like,
when welded or whatever, like lock the pieces together or something.
So for people that don't know what that is, the Seabees have these powered barges basically, and they hook up to these non-powered sections, what they call. They're like causeways. They're like floating piers, and they're 100 feet long or whatever. And they put like 10 of these things together, and they make like a pier so they can offload things. It's pretty cool. It's still pretty cool. But I'd never done that. I'm not a Seabee, And so me and Bill, they're like, hey, just go ahead and hang out. We're gonna do some things. We'll get ready. And so we're out like in the Chesapeake Bay, and they're floating these things around, whatever. At some point during the night, we're trying to sleep on an open deck in the middle of the Chesapeake Bay, cold wind, nothing to lay on, no shelter, because it's just like a barge. It's just, And they go, hey, come on, guys, you're up. So they take us to the front of this thing at night in the Chesapeake Bay, and the plan is to ram these things together. And while they're crashing into them, you drop these big 80-pound pins to hold them together. And one of them's got a pry bar, and one of them's got this big old 80-pound pin. Yeah. And you're standing, I don't know, 10 feet from the edge, and then when they hit, you got to walk up there and drop this pin in. And I just remember the thing that sticks out to me the most is at one point when they crashed, me and Bill kind of reached out and we ended up holding hands, guys. That's, so, but yeah, that really drove the point home of never again volunteer yourself. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I would see. I'm glad we're recording this too, because Cafaro likes to share stories how I always seem to always get out one way or the other. Sometimes it was beneficial I was a yeoman, and other times I wasn't. Whatever worked for me. But that time it didn't work for me. So now we got proof that
it didn't. And just for posterity's sake, I didn't drag him along. He volunteered.
Exactly. I think it was just like, I don't know, like you, I kind of get that uncomfortable feeling when there's like silence, and then it's like, man, I like Dave, so as long as I'm with him, because I'm pretty sure you were first, and I just
I think you're right. I think you're right.
And then like without breaking OPSEC, what was one of the worst places you would say you served at?
Man, it's and nothing against the city, but like I said, when I got first duty station, I show up in Philadelphia, and it's a fine place, man. I've been to Philly; it's great. But going to the shipyard, like I want to say it was like January. Yeah, the Browns were in the playoffs playing the Broncos. I remember that specifically. That day, the day I got to the ship, and it was like '88, right? January '88, and I'm like, this is awful. It's gloomy, like the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard. Look it up, man, on Google Maps. It's like, a bunch of decrepit old ships, old buildings. It's winter in the Northeast. It was awful. And that place is depressing. I mean, it's depressing in the summertime, man. It's an industrial whatever. So that by far right there, it didn't set a good tone, man, for, what I had to expect, but it also set the bar kind of low. So everything else after that was gravy,
Yeah, exactly. Even flexing.
At least I can laugh about that one,
Yeah. And then, what is a pet peeve that you have with civilians since transitioning out of the military?
Let's see. I think probably a couple. I mean, when I came back from my last deployment, which was we talked before, similar to yours, it was at Customs Battalion. I come back, I was a senior chief when I came back, and I'd been in like a leadership role. And I came back, and I worked in a factory, for years, and just I was putting my time in, just doing a job I needed to do. And I came back, man, and I didn't feel like my skills, my leadership that I'd gained, and everything was being either appreciated or utilized. I didn't feel like they could I couldn't communicate to them like, hey man, I can do so much more. And it was just kind of like they're locked into this, groove, and you were gone and now you're back, and just go back to doing what you were doing before, man. And it's like, so that's one thing. And maybe the other thing is people don't, and they can't be there, and they only get what's presented to them, but they can't know what goes on, what's involved with the military, really. You can hear it from people, you can hear it from veterans, but what I guess what veterans or what military people really go through, and how kind of we feel about some of the things that go on in the world that our country, puts us in. They're utilizing, I don't want to say using, sounds worse, but us to do things and missions. And that's what we sign up for. But people don't think always fully appreciate it. They did the thank you for your service, and I get it, but it's kind of like they don't see what really goes on, and how, we're not like a monolith. Everybody has different opinions, and, there's things that, you just don't agree with, but, you signed your life away type thing. You got to do what's asked of you. So.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yep. I mean, even before, me, it seemed like I was, and you can verify. I would just about pretty much argue about anything, against anything I was being told to do. So it's funny. Like I talked to so many of my people in recovery with me, and I'm friends with them, and I'm like, man, I just, we're alcoholics and addicts. We don't like people telling us what to do. We like to be in control of our lives. And then they look at me like, dude, didn't you do like 20 years in the military? Like, yeah. Thankfully a lot of it was reserves, and I had other ways to people want to keep me around. So
that's one thing, our unit in particular, and I think the Navy, the let's say the sea services in general, and I don't know how it is now, man, but it seems like there's more of an independent spirit than if you know some soldiers, and nothing against the Army or soldiers that serve, but there's a bit of a more independent spirit in the Navy that I saw when I experienced it.
Oh yeah.
And we have had firsthand experience with, just because you're wearing like the oak leaves or whatever doesn't mean you're running this exactly to the T. You know what I mean?
We make ship go,
That's it, right? Make boat go. But
quote the great Tim Dailey.
Right. Yeah, I figured Tim would come up. But there was a deal. I don't want to take too much time here getting off the topic, but with that, like independence and that type thing of, I say doing what's right or not being bullied. You remember the infamous minivan trip down to Little Creek?
Yeah, for firefighter training, right?
For firefighting training and whatever else. And the CO had plans, and we're going to do this, and we're going to check these boxes, and we're going to get this stuff done. For those that aren't hip to this story, we took a series of minivans. They rented 4 minivans, and we're going to have, somebody's going to drive. We're going to drive down to Little Creek. We're going to check in, and we're going to go to this training. And I guess you're supposed to sleep on the way down. Well, I mean, okay, a few people probably slept, but the majority is like we're listening to music, we're drinking Red Bulls or whatever, and eating candy, and
Yeah, I think me and Luster are getting some Slipknot going just to keep everybody amped up.
Yeah, we're Slipknot for sure. I do recall, yeah, but and so you get there and you go to check in, and they hand you this questionnaire. How much sleep have you had in the last 24 hours? It's like none. What are you talking about? Like none. I go, okay, then you're not doing firefighting training. And next thing you know, the CO's like, what are you talking about? Tell them you guys slept. And you got like Dave Miller. No, sir. Nope. I am not telling them I slept. I didn't sleep. You were supposed to sleep in a minivan on the way down. What did you do? It's like, we're riding. What are you talking about? Like 8 hours in a car?
Yeah, he wasn't in no minivan.
So, yeah, I don't know how we got down there, whatever. But it was like, nah, and it all blew up. We were standing, I think, in ranks after all that happened, and Dave's arguing with him just outright, right in front of everybody, man. And it was like, ooh, all right, who's going to come out of this one, And he's like, I remember, I think he went to Glenn and was like, Chief, take care of this, and then he walked away. So,
yeah.
But,
yep, I remember that. And then, what is something that you feel you'll always carry with you from your time of service?
I think it's a lot of the heritage. We talked a little bit about that independent spirit. Like there's a lot of history to it, and I like that. That's something that I've been interested in. Just the heritage, and that sort of like this we're talking now, the camaraderie. We could not talk for a year. We might message her here and there, but if I seen any one of you guys, it's like it's like yesterday. It's like nothing ever changed. Well, it's not that nothing ever changed, but you pick up right where you left off. That kind of camaraderie. So that's probably the big one.
Yeah, for sure. And then I don't know, this might bring Tim Dailey back into the picture, but I mean, and this could be through your whole time of service, not just ACU2, although I just have a feeling. One of the funniest stories you could share from your time of service.
Dude, before you even got finished asking the question, were you on the beach at Port Clinton when the same CO decided to come back? I don't know. The officers went out and they did their thing, I guess, and we're having our little post-operation day campfires, man. We're out at campfires telling stories, right? Yeah. Bill knows where this is going. And that's great, man. It's like we're we do the work, we put the work in, work hard, play hard type thing, and so
Yeah.
we're doing our thing. And one of the greatest storytellers that I ever knew was Tim Dailey. Like the guy podcast would have been right up his alley, man. He could have done this.
God.
He could have
Yeah.
retired on podcasts. The dude was awesome. He'd tell a
Him
story.
and Medvec together, man.
Oh yeah. I don't even think Mike was there, but I can't remember. I think Gary was there and a few of us. But anyway, enlisted guys, and I think maybe some girls, I don't know, hanging out on the beach, having stories, having a few beers, hanging out around a campfire, just good times. So the officers come back from whatever they were doing. Clearly they'd had a few, and it's cool, man. We just hang out. It doesn't matter. There's no ranks here. We're just, it always been that way. It's like a tradition with ACU too. And CO starts wanting to jump in with telling stories. I don't remember the specifics of it, but hey, you're down by the campfire. You're one of the guys, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it's after hours. We're like in civvies, whatever. And he starts telling stories. So Tim starts giving him shit. He's flipping him shit about, whatever, and the CO starts getting a little irritated, So then whatever, a few laughs. And next thing you know, CO goes downwind of the fire and starts like adjusting the thing. And like he gets doused with sparks and everybody kind of gasps, and then it subsides and everything. Kind of like, okay, cool. So then
we got to mention an important part, though.
Yeah.
The CO already had burn marks, remember?
Yeah, I think, there was a story about that.
Yeah,
that might have been part of the thing.
That happened. Yeah.
Yeah. So then he proceeds to do that same thing again without moving his position. He's downwind of it. He gets covered in sparks again. And so it happened twice. And Tim's like, okay, I gave you a pass. I'm not letting this one go. And he just flat out says, you did it again, dumbass, basically. I think that might have been the exact terminology. And so then everybody has a little laugh, but the CO can't. So that's the funny part. The not so funny part was the CO didn't take it as, hey, I'm just hanging out here with the guys and I made a fool of myself. You got to roll with it. Because that's what we'd all do, man. If you couldn't roll with it, you shouldn't have been there. And so it got kind of, afterwards, man, it got kind of ugly. Like things were said like, you might not be in the unit anymore. Like, hey, man, everybody's out here drinking and we're hanging out after hours, and finally, Lieutenant Commander Box at the time finally calmed him down and said, hey, man, let's go. Come on, let's get out of here. And it, kind of diffused it for the time being. But yeah, man, that one sticks out for sure.
And I remember he even came back and fed him more like blood in the water by saying, I used to be picked on a lot when I was.
Yeah, I thought that might have happened before, but yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it was sometime in the time frame. He was pouring gas on his own fire, man.
Yeah,
the guy was getting burnt. But
I mean, sort of the bottom line there is, man, like we all picked, man. If you were in that group and just hanging out, you got it. You were going to get your turn. And, that's one of the things that I think I take that with me here, in civilian life. It's like, man, I can roll with just about anything. You know what I mean? I mean, you're not going to flat out disrespect me, but if it's joke and we're cool, like I got veterans that I work with now, Army guys and stuff. And man, every day it's something. We're, calling each other a name or something, just like a veteran thing. And man, you roll with it, man. And I don't know, people that never served maybe don't understand that. There's really no disrespect there. That's how you're it's no different than somebody saying, hey man, I love you. It's like, I love you, man. Like, hey, dipshit, what are you doing? It's the same. That's how I hear it,
Yeah, exactly. And then what would you say is one of the greatest hopes you have for the country you were willing to give your life for?
Well, it's hard not to like take the black pill here a lot of times, man. But let's see. I hope things calm down, man, and people kind of wake up to some of the. It seems like, one party versus the other, but really, I feel like they're more. It's one team in Washington, and I'm hoping people start waking up to that, and that's my hope, man, that people see it kind of for what it is. And I hear some people that are a little more conscientious, and they do kind of express that in some way, even if it's kind of a crude. I've thought about this a lot. That's probably me being in the military, but I hear little glimpses of it, but I still hear a lot of the taken sides, the team thing, and which that discourages me. But I'm hoping people get a little bit more awake on it. That's one of the examples I always bring up to people, and I don't know if this helps or if anybody would like wake up a little bit, but it seems like the Democrats and the Republicans are constantly at each other's throats and they fight about everything. But when it comes to like defense appropriations, it's like 97% they vote in favor of it. And I get it, man. There's things behind that. Like, how are you going to vote against the military? It's not popular, but they come together, man. When you're talking about, trillions of dollars for defense spending, there's almost no dissension in there. And I'm like, yeah, it seems like when there's $1 trillion on the line and constituents or their when I say constituents, I mean the people they like answer to are the people with the big money in defense and things like that. No problem. Yep, got it.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah, I've always, everybody will bust my balls about growing up and still being, even as an adult male, still being a big pro wrestling fan, But, dude, it showed me what politics really is. It's like, okay, this is the bad guy, this is the good guy, and they're at each other's throat in the ring, but they go back to the same locker room and they're getting paid by the same person. You know, that's pretty much.
It's a good analogy,
is, to me. And then, I mean, the powers that be, if they keep us distracted amongst things like political parties, amongst race, amongst gender, and stuff like that, and we're at each other's throats about that, they can get away with more until we all, like in They Live, put on the glasses.
Yeah. You only get what, you only get the curated, view of it too, man. Like you don't get to see everything, and you have to find some way, man, to think through what's being presented,
Yeah. And then, what do you feel we can do to break the stigma of mental health and PTSD?
I feel like the stigma's probably gotten a lot better, but I guess just like talking to people, don't be afraid of it. Probably nobody's good at anything the first time they do it. So like talking to people about it, trying to understand if, somebody that's going through something, if you don't know what you're talking about, maybe don't give them advice, man, but listen to people, talk and so it's more like on an individual thing. I don't know what we can do more than what we've already been trying to do as a society. But I see a lot of veterans groups, they do the 22 a day thing. So that's getting more in the consciousness. I mean, 15 years ago, I don't think we talked about that really as much, But then we stayed 20 years in Afghanistan, and that you're getting 22 a day veteran suicides. That's wild, man. It's that's a cost that people don't or haven't thought about in the past. You think about the dollar cost, but people don't think about, and then maybe the direct casualty cost, but people don't think about that cost that carries on.
Yeah, exactly. So like, as we mentioned, we became friends and serving together in ACU 2, which was, assault craft unit, main side down in Little Creek, where we would do most of a lot of our training. But we were part of here in Cleveland in the reserve unit. We had our own little reserve center over now. The Coast Guard owns it. It's by the Rock Hall.
Yeah.
And, the good old days, we'd have the Mike 8 boats. We'd get to go out, we're going to do swim quals today, be a hibachi grill or something would end up on the deck. And, some coolers and stuff. And
yeah, there may or may not have been some beers involved. I don't know how they got on a Navy boat, but
yeah, Steel Beach picnic type thing,
Yeah.
But we were out there doing our quals, and it was the good old days. And then I remember like 9/11, and then everything, was kind of up in the air and shut down.
Yeah.
And that's when things definitely started changing quite a bit. And
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I like I said, after it was around that time, it's like, for me, there was so much, and well, first I just want to say, man, I'm grateful for, your friendship during that time to today, especially, that because, I would let my drinking and my other demons and stuff get sometimes the better of me. And, you love me through that, and you still put up with me today. But, now that I'm sober and everything, but there's so much that, I don't know, like during that time period, I was like going through, man, like during 9/11 and losing my nephew to suicide. And then becoming a father and stuff. And so it was just like, I was kind of there, but I wasn't always there. But you went through, your own tragic events, and you gave me permission to talk about this before we came on here. So I want the audience to feel like I'm exploiting a friend or anything, but
it's not that at all.
Yeah. But before, you reminded me, before Cleveland shut down and ACU2 transferred to Buffalo, you went through some very shocking and tragic things in your own life, and I'll let you go ahead and share a little bit about.
Yeah, man. So, I'm not exactly sure how to tell this story. It's not fun. I don't talk about it a lot. People that were there, that know me, know about it, and people that don't, I've really communicated this with very few people outside of my small circle, family that already knows. And then even then, man, it's not something you talk about it all the time. But in early 2004, I guess there was trouble between my mom and my dad. And it's probably one of these things, man, when you're a kid, you think your family's the greatest, man. Like, because the good times, I'm sorry, this is already starting, but like the good times always outweigh the bad. You don't see it as a kid, man. You think this is just how it is. Things are great. We go to Indians games and we, whatever, go to, grandma and grandpa's swimming, and, this is just normal. And there was, looking back as an adult, you see, maybe things weren't always so rosy and perfect, but you didn't register on a level like that usually. But anyway, my dad had retired. He was, home a lot, and kind of typical story, the wife, my mom, she was born in the 40s. And so she was a stay-at-home mom the whole time we were kids. Well, when he retired, she wanted to do something outside the home. And I think it started with like, she was doing like housekeeping or cleaning offices or something to get herself, keep herself busy and get out of the home and not always be like, hey, 24/7 with the same person all the time, And so my dad started wanting to go and help her out. I'll help you out. She's like, man, like, he's not getting the hint here. The kind of the point is I need a little break,
Yeah.
So at some point she took a job at the Lorain Public Library and working as a library assistant. And I think I talked to you about it before. My mom was like an avid reader. And so like for her, that was her dream job, man. She worked in circulation, and sometimes they weren't busy. I mean, they had no problem with letting the assistants read. Like she's reading at work, man, reading books. Yeah. This is her deal. I mean, she did her duties, whatever she had to shelve books or whatever, take care of patrons. But I mean, she just she couldn't have got a better job for like after the kids were grown up type thing. She loved it. And so at some point, man, she'd worked in Avon, and she worked, I think, a little bit at the South Lorraine Library. And at some point, she transferred to the main branch library, which is downtown Lorraine. And I mean, you're from Brook Park, right? And
yeah, I live there now. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, maybe from North Olmsted. I can't remember. But anyway, Lorraine,
Yeah.
man, I mean, it had like its, a little downtown area. It's typical of any, I mean, Lorraine's a mid-sized city, 75, 80,000 people, whatever. And you got a homeless population. It was a steel town that wasn't doing so good anymore. So where the library was, it never changed. It had been there for years. And so it has its fair share of whatever. And I think it was just a reason. My dad was like, you need to quit that job. It's dangerous. You keep going down there and I want you to quit. It was really more of, I think, him wanting to control. Like he couldn't control her being outside the home and didn't like that. And he just, wanted some kind of control, I guess. And early 2004, that kind of came to a head and they argued about that. I mean, my younger brother was still living in the home. He's 14 years younger than me. He was about 21 at the time. And he witnessed, like what could have been a violent incident. My brother actually had to he got a rifle out to stop my dad from doing whatever he was going to do. Police were called and they took all the weapons out of the home. And at that point, my mom made a decision. She was going to go live with her sister. She wasn't going to get a divorce from him. That wasn't the plan, but she was like, I'm going to live with my sister for a while. I can't stay in this situation. Basically, you're not going to control me. But I mean, my mom was, a Christian, very obedient to the Bible. So she was not going to divorce my dad. He was going to work it out, but she wasn't staying in that environment. She stayed around, like I mentioned before, kind of a throwback. There was incidents that it never really registered with me where they weren't getting along the best. And I don't know what they ever were fighting about, but my dad had a bit of a temper. There was times when you'd walk on eggshells around him. And so that was I can't remember exactly, but it was January 2004. And my kids used to stay over there. And they stayed over there. I don't think it was they were there that day, but my daughter was like 3 or 4 years old at the time. The boys were a little bit older, and we picked them up. We found out about some of this stuff later, but and that wasn't the day the cops were called. I recall that, but there was things like that in the home. Anyway, let me try and get my bearings back now.
Yeah, take your time, man.
I
know you were 16 years around that time.
Yeah, somewhere around there. I joined in 87, so 2004. Yeah, it was about 16 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
But so yeah, and I was doing. If I'm jumping around, I apologize to you and the audience, but I'll get through it. We had my son was a freshman in high school at the time. My oldest son was a freshman in high school. He was going to Admiral King, same high school I went to. And he was in the Navy, junior ROTC program there. And so, I don't know, strangely enough, man, like some incident happened with one of the drill instructor there had commit suicide, like right around that same time. And he was a retired senior chief. Robert Sanchez. In fact, he's related to Juan, our buddy.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. And so he committed suicide, and I was on the funeral honors team, and I had specifically requested, I go, hey, if they do honors, man, I want to do that. And so we did that. I was an E6. I remember I was an E6 at the time. So we did the church service at St. Peter's in Lorraine. And then we picked up, the boys were there too, right? So like my son and his friends, they did their part. They did a drill thing, marching, parading the colors, I think it was. And my son and one of his friends Andrew. We got them. We went and got something to eat, and then we picked up the other two kids, and we went to Columbus for my daughter's birthday. It was on the 17th. I think she was like 4 years old, 4 or 5, something like that. Anyway, we go down to Columbus, and we like spend the weekend at a hotel where they can swim and whatnot, and like we come home, and like on that Sunday or Monday, I think it had snowed, the kids were off school, and I went back to work on like a Tuesday, and I come home, and the weather had gotten better, but there was still plenty of snow on the ground. So I tell the kids, hey, let's grab the sleds, man. Let's go sledding. We'll go out to the big hill in Amherst. Like, yeah, awesome, cool, yeah, great. And so like I'm getting my stuff, ready and everything, and we're out the front door, and the phone rings, and I answer the phone, man. There's like talk about phone calls or moments, man, that change your whole life. My brother says to me, he says, "Hey, Dave," he goes, "I think Dad shot Mom, man." And I'm like what, man? Like, it doesn't even register. These emotions come later, just crying and the sadness. And I'm like, all right, well, like, and he's like, yeah, man, outside of work, man. Because my brother actually worked there too. He'd gone in for his shift. He was a shelver, man. He was like 20 years old in college. And they pulled him aside, kind of told him what had happened. And basically, so I got, here, my wife was working, man. She was working at Lorraine Public Library too, but she was working at North Ridgeville. And so, man, I jump in the car, I get the kids in the car, and I'm trying to act like nothing's wrong. I'm like, hey, guys, we're not going to go sledding. We're going to go see Mom. So we drive out there. Nobody's told her yet. And so my mom and my wife were super close, man. It was like another daughter to my mom, and my wife, was like her daughter. And I mean, they were like that. And so like I go into the library, man. I tell the kids to wait here, and I was like, hey, have you heard anything? And she hadn't, man. They wouldn't tell her. They weren't going to tell her that, what had happened. And which I get, man. But I got her, and I told her. We got in the car, man. I told her, and like we went to Community Health Partners in Lorraine, man. We drove from North Ridgeville to Lorraine, and we gave them my mom's name. That's where they had taken her. And I'm thinking, my brother just said she had been shot. I'm thinking, that's awful. But I'm still thinking she's okay. Because that's not the first place you go to, man. Like, that's not me anyway. Always optimistic. And so they were like, all right, hold on just a minute. We'll get somebody. And just the way they said it, man, they took us back in a room, and I knew. But then they told us, man, like, she had been shot multiple times, and she had passed. We still had to identify her. And I mean, I have this memory of it, man. It's like, it felt like we were in like a parking garage or something. I just remember being cold, and like everything in the background, like, it's gone. And anybody that's been to funerals, and you see people that are, done up for the funeral, man, this is not that. My mom had like an anguished, pained look on her face, man. Like that was the real thing, man. And all we could do was was leave, man. We had to go tell our kids. In fact, we dropped the kids off. I forgot about that part. We had dropped the kids off at her sister's, my wife's sister's. And now I'm left thinking, I got to go not only tell my kids, man, that their grandmother is gone, but that their grandfather did it, man. I mean, it tore me in two, man. I mean, it was just like trying to hold those two things, man. Like, these are the people that raised you and loved you. And now one of them's gone and the other one's responsible, man. And I know there's domestic violence and a lot of people have gone through that, man, but it is an impossible situation. I mean, 20 years later, man, it still hurts.
Yeah.
That's like an understatement. But I mean, it's like you're so torn, man. Like, how do you hate a parent? You know, and I know people that do, man, people that's been abused and whatnot. This wasn't that. I wasn't in a situation where I felt like I was abused emotionally or any other way. There were times, man, that weren't great, you know, but people are people, you know, and you kind of forgive and you roll with it. But this was like impossible. Like, how did this even happen, man? Like, how do you deal with that? Like, this is your dad, man. Just did that. If it was some stranger, you'd be like, yeah, man, like, F that guy. That's the devil, man.
Yeah.
But you don't even have the possibility to process that, man. Like, it's still your dad. I mean, I don't know what else to say, man, about that.
Now, you say looking back on times as an adult now, you know, with some years past, would you feel that there had been maybe a history of mental illness, or do you recall things in your childhood that just, you know, they weren't right with family or with your dad previous to, you know?
Yeah, man. Sure. But for me, it never rose to the level of like, I didn't think that was a possibility. And that's probably naive on my part, because it's always a possibility. Close relationship violence is common. It happens a lot. But, you know, and you learn that later. But yes, there were definitely times where something could set my dad off and he wouldn't talk to a family member, man, you know, whether it be one of my mom's sisters or my wife's mom. This happened, some weird thing would happen and he'd be like, you snubbed me, I'm not talking to you anymore. Like, kind of juvenile almost, like,
Yeah.
all right, that's weird, you know, but you're kind of like, and then that was like the walking on eggshells thing, man. Like, something would happen and you'd be like, you know, just like, and I think that's some of my personality. I learned to like keep my head down as a kid and like, you know, not look for trouble, you know, stick your head up and get it knocked off, you know. And so, but that was a coping mechanism. I didn't realize I was doing that. And, you know, you think about that later where like, yeah, man, anybody that, you know, ran afoul of my dad, not that he was any kind of super powerful person or anything, but they, you know, you're going to have a problem with him. He's not going to talk to you, you know, and it could go on for, you know, he had an iron will when it came to stuff like that, like holding grudges.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, this is just weird, man. And eventually stuff would melt, like, but it would be like, I can remember, man, he didn't talk to my Aunt Karen for years, man, over something dumb, man, some perceived snub, man. And weird, I say weird, man, but I think maybe he was trying, but a lot of it seemed put on. But he started to try to get religious, and he would, but it seemed all too much, a little showy, a little over the top, wearing big crosses and stuff like that, man. It, you know, that was pretty apparent even right then, that I was like, oh, this seems fake and put on,
to try and like because your mom was such a good
Yeah,
Christian woman, you
just
think he was trying to?
right. And it was like it seems put on. And they even started going to church and everything, but it never felt real or genuine to me.
Yeah.
Seemed pretty obvious. I think everybody picked up on that. But yeah, man, that day, man, I had to call my sister. She was her husband was in the Navy. They were like in Groton, Connecticut or something, man. And like man, I called and like so my sister has maybe a less optimistic view of things. And I called her. Her husband answered the phone, man, and I was like, "Hey, can you put Beth on?" And I'm like, "Hey, Beth, I got to tell you something." And man, the first words out of her mouth was, "Dad killed Mom," and nobody had told her. It just must have been the tone of my voice. And I'm like, "Yeah, man." I go, "Yeah." I go, "I'm sorry to have to call you and tell you this," and she just broke down, man. Like, but on that, my mom and her hadn't been talking. There were things that got between them, whatever, man. I'm not going to go deep into that, but there were personal things there that they weren't on the best of terms. So, which I'm sure she's carried a lot of that kind of guilt because they hadn't really talked, man. The first thing she hears about her after how many ever years is, hey, your dad just killed your mom. So that was pretty awful having to deliver that news and hearing the aftermath of it, on the phone. So,
and then like you'd said that he seemed pretty controlling.
Yeah.
I mean, did you notice looking back, a pattern or a history of that even before this now?
I guess so, man. I don't want to, it's weird, and I don't know if people get it so much today. We talk about like old school, man. Like my dad's dad was born in Greece, right? It's like he was an immigrant. So, and I think my grandma might have been like, she wasn't born in Hungary, but her parents were. So it was like second generation, like this is like old country stuff, man. Like,
yeah,
where, and I'm not saying this is right. I'm not using that to justify anything, man. It's just the way things were, man. Like there were more clearly defined roles. Like I grew up and my mom never worked outside the home. She had worked before the kids came along, she had worked in a bank. When the kids came along, it was full-time mother, full-time housekeeper. There was always, food on the table when my dad got home from work. The laundry was done, the cleaning was done, whatever, man. I don't know. People don't live like that today. Very few. Yeah. And so it didn't show up, man, because that's just how it was, man. Their parents were both like that. My grandma, the one that was Hungarian, man, she never drove. Neither one of them did. They were from the old country. They would always say it. We're from the old country. They never had a car. You know what I mean? Yeah. My other grandparents was they both did drive, but my grandma never had a job outside the home. He provided. It was the man's job to provide. So was there a controlling aspect to it? Probably, but a lot of it was that's just the way things were, man. Like it was expected, and it was expected by the people, and it was accepted by all of them too. That's just the way things were. And then when things started to change, we're getting into the 2000s, and hey, the kids are grown, and like my youngest son is 20 years old, and he's going to be out on his own soon. I want to get outside the home and start working. Well, hey, he couldn't roll with it. He couldn't change. He couldn't accept it. So that's when it started to become a problem. When she wanted to do something different outside that norm, which meant by the 2000s, I mean, that's not the way society was anymore.
Yeah.
So
there was no like history of like violent behavior really that you had ever witnessed before.
Like I said, when I was in like 5th and 6th grade, I do remember some times where things weren't great, and I don't know what was going on, man. I don't know if there was drinking or anything like that. It never was overt or apparent. And I don't know my dad worked outside the home, and he worked like a third shift job at Lorraine Ford assembly plant there. And so I don't know, man. There were times I remember during I think it was like fifth grade, man. I had some anxiety because it seemed like they weren't getting along, man. And occasionally they might have had like shouting matches or something. I never knew what that was about. Really don't know I don't know if there was any kind of like infidelity or anything. I don't know if that's a possibility or what it was. It could have been finances for all I know.
Yeah.
That was probably in the early 80s, late 70s. Times weren't great, as far as you're a little younger than me, but there was some long-term layoffs and stuff. The Ford workers did pretty good though. So I don't think we were ever in any jeopardy of losing the home or anything.
Yeah.
Could have been financial. Yeah. I don't know.
Were your grandparents and some of your dad's family members still around during that time period?
Yeah, I kind of forgot about that one, man. They didn't want to release anything to the news until the family had been notified, and we were the family. But my mom's parents were both still alive, and my mom's oldest sister showed up, and she's like, "Hey, somebody's got to tell Grandma and Grandpa, right?" And so, like, I just took that as a man. I'm in sort of a shock. I don't know if it's shock or whatever, but you're not processing things normally. And one person's telling me, "Hey, we're going to release this to the news. You don't want your family to find out that way." I'd let them know. You want to be the ones to tell them. And my aunt says, "Yeah, somebody's got to tell Grandma and Grandpa, man." So like I call them up. I just call them on the phone, man. Like I'm talking about the weather, I guess. And I'm like, "Hey, Mom's gone." They're like, "What do you mean she's gone? Like, where'd she go?" I'm like, "No, you don't understand." And I'm like, they're gone now, but I feel guilty that happened. Like I delivered the worst possible news to them about their daughter, man, like over the phone, probably almost in a casual way. I don't know, man. I regret that.
And I'm sorry for, asking that question and bringing that memory up, but I was thinking more along the lines of on your father's side, because this is how my mind operates. And I know some of the struggles that I've had in the past, because I've always worried. I put so much weight and worry into what other people think about how I handle things, instead of just like living my life. And, like, I struggle with that. Our time together in the military, I struggle with that at home. Like, am I living up to mom and dad's, expectations? Gotcha. And if my kids act a certain way or whatever, it's a reflection of me, and I gotta, and I'm finally now at 50 years old getting to a place where it's just like, I don't care what everybody else. I'm 50 years old. I'm doing a freaking podcast, and people want to judge whatever. I'm doing something I enjoy now. I'm pursuing things I enjoy, but there was always that pressure that I put on myself, worrying too much about what others were thinking about me. And if I was fitting into some kind of mold, I don't know if, you said your dad being old school, if maybe he was getting pressure too from like, how can you let your wife go to work? And you know what I'm saying? If there was anything like that going on, not making any kind of excuses.
No, I don't think I don't think the external factors were a problem. Cause like I said before, man, if his brothers told him something he didn't like, he wouldn't talk to them for, 6 months. And they were all, except for one, all of his brothers were older, and his two oldest brothers had been divorced, remarried. Both of their wives, each of both of their wives had worked outside the home in the past. So I don't think was a factor. His parents had passed. My oldest grandfather, my dad's dad, died when I was like 10, years old. Or he was born in the late 1800s in Greece. He was an old man when I was born. At least I felt like that. I think he died in like 1980, 81. I was pretty young. I remember being like 10 years old. My grandma died like in the 90s. My kids were, little babies, at the time. So he wasn't getting anything from his parents. I don't think his brothers, they weren't close really. They talked and they'd visit now and then, but I don't think the pressure was coming externally, but just the way it had been ingrained in him, I guess,
Yeah.
and didn't like the fact that he was losing control of an aspect of his life, I guess.
Yeah.
So
And then what ended up, after this had happened, like what ended up happening with your father?
Yeah, so boy, that takes a long time, right? You think this is a done deal here, it's obvious. I mean, I didn't even finish telling you the story. Let me, because I feel a little bit better now. What he did was, the firearms were taken out of the home. He went to a local gun shop, maybe that day, maybe the day before. He bought like a 380 pistol, I think it was. He bought the wrong ammunition and had to go back into the shop and tell him, hey, he bought 38s for a 380 or something like that. And I know that sounds dumb that I'm saying that, but like we were in the military, like we know that kind of stuff. And so he went back in the shop and they're like, yeah, you bought the wrong ammo. So they gave him the right ammo, whatever. And I'm definitely not getting political on that stuff. I'm a Second Amendment supporter, even through all this. People are going to do what they're going to do. But so he goes down there, man, knowing she's coming into work, and like meets her in the street outside Lorraine Public Library, main branch there on 6th Street in Lorraine. There's a little plaque there. So there was, to my mom. And he just shoots her, man, in cold blood out in front of the library in the street, man. There were kids across the street, man, witness this, So can you go back and refer? I was okay at the beginning of that, but I forgot what you'd ask. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Like what ended up happening with your?
Oh yeah, so that happened, and it's, like I said, it's cut and dry, right? Like in fact, he walked into the library, man, went to the security guard, who was an off-duty police officer, I believe, or retired police officer, and said, "I just shot my wife outside," and hands him the gun. I mean, like it was, cold, man. Like, so anyway, so that's pretty cut and dry. He did it. He didn't try and hide it. There wasn't any, sneaky, I did it in the home and, I didn't know how this happened. It was an accident. None of that. This was made up his mind. He was going to do it, did it. Because she wasn't going to leave him, I guess. So anyway, yeah, man, they charged him with whatever the charges were. The incident that had happened before where the firearms were taken out of the home, no charges had been pressed. So they didn't have what they said was like a first-degree murder case. It was like, what? I mean, like, huh? I don't know, man. I don't know all the ins and outs of the laws, but they basically, whatever the charges were, this thing wasn't. It took a year, but they basically do a plea, and there was a sentencing probably a year later, and it was like, so he's all his time like in Lorain County jail, and then they have a sentencing in the Lorain County court there, and it's a weapons charge and like some kind of, I don't remember if it was manslaughter or second-degree murder or something, whatever it was. That's the plea, because he gets a lawyer, and they come up with this deal, and it's like, I want to say like 25 years to life, maybe in prison. I don't remember all the details of possibility of parole, but at some point I'm starting to think, man, what if this dude gets out of jail, man? What am I going to do then, man? Like, here's this dude, like, what am I going to do? Like, I ain't taking him in. I'm still living in Lorraine at the time, and I'm like, God, I start thinking, man, I hope that never happens, man. I don't want to deal with that. And I hate to say, fortunately, I'm not a hateful person. I even specifically made a point to, in my heart and, verbally tell him, like, I forgive you for what you did, which is extraordinarily difficult. And I hope nobody ever has to go through that. But you can't carry it, man. You can't carry it around. So anyway, I think it was 2017 or 18, and he passed away in prison. He died in prison. He was in I want to say he was in Mansfield, the new Mansfield prison out there.
Yeah.
He might have got moved. His brother had petitioned to get him moved closer, somewhere in Lake County, so that he could visit. I tell you, man, his oldest brother, Pete, was the only one, man. I think my brother visited him too, but only a few people that I know of visited him, and it was mostly on my dad's side. And I say my little brother did. My little brother went and visited, and I went once or twice, and that was it. I couldn't bear to do it. I didn't try to carry that around. There's no burning hate or anything like that. I literally made a physical and mental choice to forgive, which I'm glad I did, man. But it's hard.
Yeah. Wow.
I'm not trying to make this sound trite, but man, that song, man, the impression that I get, Mighty Mighty Boss Tones or whatever, I think about that. And I know that's some goofy, some 90s ska thing or whatever, but it's people that's never gone through it, I hope I never will, that type thing.
Yeah.
That's how I felt when that happened, man. I was like, this is it. I'd never been tested. That tests you. And that forgiveness piece. I tell everybody, man, I'm telling everybody that's listening to this, think about that stuff ahead of time, man. About forgiveness, man. It's you have to do it. You have to make an active choice to do it.
Wow.
It can wreck you, man.
And Dave, I really appreciate you being, transparent and open and sharing this, because I do hope that that there's some positivity and some good that does come from somebody that might need to hear this message. I know I need to hear, the forgiveness piece, right now, for some stuff that I still hold on to that I need to let go of, because that weight gets heavy.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
New year, new me, man. You want to drop some weight real quick? I guess that's stuff to really. But
I mean, just be honest.
Sharing,
Go ahead. I
was gonna say, hopefully sharing, your story, it helps others to heal that may be in something similar. And I hope, that you being willing to do this brings you more peace and your family more peace and healing. And
yeah, man, I appreciate you letting me talk about it. It's hard, and it's like I said, I don't talk about it much. It's you feel it. It's hard, and a lot of times, man, I feel this weird, and I don't want to do this to anybody else, man. I don't want to, hey, man, you having a good day? You want to hear a story? You know what I mean?
yeah.
What are you gonna do, man? When do you bring that up?
Yeah.
It's a rough one, man. It can ruin a day for sure. It's not even your people, but anyway, about the forgiveness piece, I just want to say, man, be honest. Anybody's listening, be honest with yourself, man. Mean it. And it's not for anybody else but you, really. At the end of the day, man, that's going to help you. So be honest with your feelings, even if you don't talk about it with anybody. I think I recommend having somebody to talk to about it, but deal with it and be honest, man. And make sure you really internalize that forgiveness, so you aren't carrying it around. You have to be, but you got to be honest, and it's only to yourself. I mean, you can put on airs for other people, whatever. That doesn't do it. He seems okay. that type of thing. I'm mostly okay, but it doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. I don't carry that around with me. But the forgiveness thing, I just think it's enough of a burden as it is with dealing with what happened, but to carry around like a hatred or something like that, man, I can't imagine. I probably could have got by, but at some point you're going to crack. You can't do it. You're just too much to carry.
Yeah.
And so you really, and I said, man, it's easier said than done. It's not an easy thing to do, man. You have every reason in the world. Your brain is going to tell you, and your heart and every fiber of your being is going to tell you, I got every reason in the world to carry this hate. I deserve it. It's sneaky like that, man. But easier said than done, but you got to let it go. You have to. It doesn't mean you stop caring about it, but you have to. You can't carry that kind of thing with you, man. You have to like get in there deep in your soul, man, your heart, your whatever, and just do the forgiveness. I mean, work it. I don't know. It's different for everybody. I know, and every situation is different, but work on it,
Yeah. I mean, I'm part of the, recovery program, which resentments, if we let resentments grow roots, that could be what causes us to slip and go back out,
I could see that, man. I could see it for sure. Like just even carrying that around, I could see where substances would become a real calling, man. Like it's going to take some of that pressure off you.
Yeah.
And I did that. I want to say, man, like things, it just seems like things in life, what you actually practice is what you manifest. I'm not trying to sound like new age or weird or anything, but what you actually do and what you practice is what you do. It's like what you manifest, what you bring about. I made an active decision that, and I think I said it at my mom's funeral, man. That was what stuck out was for me. What was the most important thing to come from this was going to be forgiveness. And, I had a hard time saying the words, but I made that point, man, that this was going to be, forgiveness is what I was going to concentrate on. I don't know. I'm glad I did. I'm glad I was in that headspace, and I had people around me that, that love me, but just, I can't overstate it. Because I could be in a lot worse shape now. I don't know. Who knows? You probably have heard Jordan Peterson talk about, what would your life look like if, what was your own personal hell type thing. And I'm thinking, if I don't forgive, because there's nothing I can do about the situation. I can't go back in the past, but that could have created my own personal hell, like affecting my relationships with my wife and my kids. And I'm sure it affected it anyway, but holding on to a hatred or something like that, man, is probably what got my dad into the situation he was in, man. Probably what drove it, because it's like you could see that it was holding grudges, holding on, nursing these grudges. Like that's my little thing, man. I'm doing this thing, and it's like, hey, you gotta. It affects you whether you think it does or not.
Now, before we get ready and wrap up, I wanted to, bring things kind of back around to your time in the Navy.
Yeah.
Because, you went through all that. And then I remember, like I said, we had many more time together, serving together, after that. And, more memories at ACU2. You kind of like, I think you told me you kind of around that time, you kind of like really dug in, as I guess a coping mechanism, really dug in your Navy.
Probably, yeah. A lot of it, I think, was like I needed to keep myself doing something. And just a cherry on top, about 4 months later, I guess, May of that same year, we had a house fire, on my son's birthday. Like I was taking college classes and I'd finished up a big project, and like I was like, sigh of relief, man. Went home, picked up the kids, man. We're going to Cedar Point for his birthday. And we went to McDonald's. And before we'd even got out of McDonald's, my wife gets a call from one of the neighbors. Hey, I think your house is on fire. So like we go back. Before we even get to the house, man, you can see smoke. Fire department's out there. So we have this, hey, we have insurance and everything. It's not like we, got hit too hard financially, man. But like everything that we owned in our house was ruined, and we had started going to one of these grief things, and I think we went to 1 or 2 sessions, and then we had a house fire, and it was like that ended that. I mean, I recommend, group counseling, talking about it in a safe and supportive environment. But man, I was wrecked. I couldn't believe it, man. Like,
yeah,
it's about all you could do. I kind of cracked up and I kind of, half laughed, half cried. Like, are you serious? Like, really? And, so then it's another thing. You're rolling with that, man. But yeah, so kind of got back on track. The insurance set us up in a house in Lorain there on the east side. And we, got through that. It was like by the fall, they had rebuilt our house and everything, and we moved back in. But yeah, right through that summer, man, I just like dug in, man. You remember we used to do some stuff, at Port Clinton and whatnot. And I started like calling people and like, hey, Lorain has a Port Fest. Can we do that? And they were like, yeah, sure. We'd love to have you. And then they gave our number to Sandusky, and Sandusky was like, hey, come on out here. This Bill Bailey got involved here. He was like, yeah, get the rock star rider, get all your, no green M&Ms or whatever in the dressing room. We're rock stars. We did. We got like passes to Cedar
Point. The ACU2 tour, the lake tour.
I'm telling you. So like we started doing, and we had a CO at the time, Dean, who was driving. He is definitely not the guy who caught himself on fire. Everybody. Yeah. And sorry about that. But yeah, Dean was like, hey, he said, he was a good CO, man. He said, here's what I want to do. He goes, I want to get more hours on these boats than you guys have ever put on these boats. What do we got to do? So I'm like, he's talking to me. He's talking to me. And so I'm like on the phone with Lorain Port Authority. Hey, can we do anything here? Start getting the ball rolling on that. Next thing you know, Sandusky's calling us. And we were doing, I feel like there were 3 things, man.
Conneaut,
Conneaut we were already doing, I think. I didn't really have anything to do with that. I think Glenn might have had more to do with that. I know
we did one in Menor too.
Yeah. I know Lorain, and there was Sandusky for sure. And I don't know how long them continued on. It would have only been another couple of years anyway. But we did the Lorain thing, and that was cool. And, we had people out there. People like that stuff. And, we were getting hours on the boats, man. Dean said, hey, we're going to get hours on the boats. And we did it. And, but there's a lot of work because, I was like what they call it, officer in charge of evolution or whatever for like both of those big things, man. And, I find out later, because I'm Mr. Conscientious, and we're staying at that house on the east side, and like anything that's under my control, like I feel like I should be there. And so like we put in this long day, and so we tie the boats up, and the Lorain police are going to like leave a car out there. Great. No problem. I'm good. I'm going back to the house and get some sleep. And I find out the next day that you wahoos are jumping off the boat into the Black River. And I'm like, don't even tell me, man, if you guys are going to do that crap. One of you guys is going to drown, and they're going to have me like at a court martial. Like, hey, this was your deal. What's going on, I
think we were trying to impress some locals that we met at the bar.
Man,
like, hey,
I
want
hear
to check out our boats? And then there might have been some skinny dipping and stuff like that involved.
Yeah. And so like Dan Green, I hear is like, and I'm like, what? I'm like, I thought you were Mr. Clean too, man. Like, and I was like, hey, we're jumping off the boats into a river at night, man. I'm like, oh my God. Like, that means you started the boat up and dropped the ramp out there in the Black River, and I'm like,
After
I don't
we
even
may
wanna
have
know.
consumed a little bit of.
Yeah, no doubt. You know, nothing ever bad happened with that combination, right? Like swimming in a dark river at night, you know, whatever. It's in Lorraine. You know what's in that river? Anyway, but yeah, so I find out about that later, and I'm just like, I feel like I dodged a bullet, man. And I was probably overreacting. You know what I mean? Nothing probably would have happened. That was just one of them ACU2 things.
Yeah.
But
Would
and
you,
me,
you know, I mean, had situations been different, I'm sure you would have been there right along with us, you
I
know?
don't know, man. I was so much more like I didn't go to your parties and stuff. Like we were friends, man, and I got you. You know, like
Yeah.
you're into like mushroom head and whatnot, and I'm just like, hey, it's cool, man. Like you got your own personality, you got your own thing going on, and not knowing to the extent that you were battling these demons, it was just like I don't know, it's Bill, man. That's just Bill, and you've been Dollar Bill for forever, man. Like, and I don't
I
know.
think,
I just didn't go into the thing that I had like young kids and like my personal relationships meant so much more to me, family and whatnot. Like I was just like, sounds cool, man, but like I really can't do it,
well, the
But
thing was too, though, it's like you being who you are, man. And it's just like, I really valued our friendship because I needed, I needed balance during that time. And you would always be somebody to kind of balance my head and in a fun, in a fun way, when
oh,
I'd
of
be
course.
beating myself up and
Oh
everything,
yeah.
and I'm very grateful, and it never went unnoticed, man, and I'm truly grateful for your friendship and our friendship, over the
Well, hey,
years, and
man,
especially during that time, man.
that means a lot, man. Because I never know. You never know what kind of impact you have on somebody, and that's good to hear, man. I appreciate that.
And now, the guy that would put together those special ACU2 parties, is approaching 15 years sober, and
Yeah, man. That's awesome.
now I realize how important those personal relationships are now. Me and my daughters are my, that's my crew, man. We do so much
Yeah.
fun stuff together, make so many positive memories, and so it's like I needed guys like you to show me, that there was a better way,
I hear you. Yeah,
so,
man.
but I want to get ready and wrap up, but I just want to say, man, thank you so much for being real and vulnerable and sharing that. I know it wasn't easy. It was not easy for me to, sit here and hear, because like I said, I love you, man. You're a good friend, and
I appreciate that, Will.
I'm here feeling it, not to your extent, but I just, you don't like to see your friends suffer and hear those things, but he also left a positive message of hope too, man. And I'm grateful for you for that. And
I got you. This is we're pushing here. My dogs are starting to say like, "Hey, man, it's time."
yeah. So yeah, it's time. I mean, we can go ahead and wrap right now, man. But I thank you once again. And yeah, let's try and, keep in touch. And when I get this all edited and stuff, of course, I'll send it to you and
For sure. I appreciate
from
that,
there.
man. Maybe we can get back on here and talk about some, other things, man. Maybe not as heavy at some point.
Yeah, I do and before when Tim was battling cancer, man, I would I got together with those guys at the VFW post, and I'd leave their microphone on. I'd say, "Hey guys, I got to record something. I got to document some of this stuff. I wish we could have done something like but maybe I could still arrange some kind of like a ACU2 special edition here."
Okay.
Soon.
Yeah, man. Sounds good.
All right, man. Thanks again, brother. Love you, dude.
All right, Bill. Love you too, man. Thanks for having me.
All right. Bye.
Bye.